Welcome to Actuaries in the Wild podcast. I started this podcast because I believe actuaries are more than just your stereotypical number cruncher that sits at a computer all day. Many of us have endeavors that go beyond the traditional actuarial realm. My goal is to meet those actuaries who have ventured from their desks to explore their passions. It's time to meet the actuaries in the wild. Today's actuary in the wild is Aree Bly. Welcome, Aree.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
Ari, I want to start by finding out a little bit more information about your background. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, including what made you decide to become an actuary.
Awesome. So I was born and raised and moved around a lot. I've lived in probably 6 different states before I even graduated high school. But I call Wyoming home.
Okay.
And it, on my way off to college, that was kind of the first time that I heard about the actuarial career.
Mm-hmm.
I did my parents were, one was an English professor and the other was a nurse slash librarian.
Yeah.
So it was not something that was on the radar until a college colleague of my dad's happened to come out and talk to me in senior year of high school and said, "Hey, I
I
saw
see.
your scores in the SAT or whatever it was that I had taken, one of the standardized exams." And she came out with a list of careers that might
Right.
suit a numbers person. And I jumped right on the first one on the list, probably, and said, "Well, that looks
Yeah.
interesting. I'll start there and see what happens." So yes, yeah. So I ended up going to a liberal arts school, got the math and accounting background, and then got a statistics master's at a different school, and combined that to create a really solid base for the actuarial field.
So
So
you were an actuary. You mentioned to me when we talked before for 25 years. Tell me a little bit
yeah.
about what you did during your actuarial career.
Yeah, so I moved. I started out at Cigna, which has a wonderful rotation program for
Hmm.
all of their actuaries. So I got a flavor of the pricing side, the financial reporting side, much of the health side, a little bit of the retirement side, some of the reinsurance side, some of the international piece. So it was really great to kind of be at a buffet where I could sample
Right.
all the things that were going on as I was working through the exams. And then I could jump into kind of fine tuning what I wanted to be doing. And then I was led to move out to Colorado here, where I worked for Great West in healthcare. And I decided that consulting looked really interesting at that
Right.
point. So I spent a little time with Milliman, and even spent a few years in Brazil while I was working for them, and then came back, helped with an integration of Cigna and Great West, and then moved back to consulting because I kind of missed that
Hmm.
lifestyle,
Yeah.
and spent the last almost 10 years in a healthcare consulting role with Wakely Consulting. So
Okay.
kind of moved around a bit, but it was all kind of following what was really interesting and what was engaging me at that point.
I see. So, as I mentioned, you were an actuary for 25 years, but then you left the field and you became a life coach. Uh, Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you evolved from a traditional actuary and the work that you did as an actuary to what you're doing now as a life coach.
Yeah, I think it kind of evolved more than was, a big flash of lightning.
Right.
And I think I got to a point where I started paying a little bit more attention to what was engaging me. I like a couple of years in, probably 6 or 7 years into my career with Wakely. I was just kind of feeling like there's got to be a little bit more. Like I
I
wasn't
see.
as excited about all the client work that we were doing. I still enjoyed it. I still loved the challenge.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was a little bit of something missing. And I started really paying attention to what was engaging me during the days and what was energizing me, and looked for the patterns in what that was telling me. And what it was telling me was that I really was starting to enjoy working with the people and helping others to develop their skills and their um, ability to be better at what they're doing. And it was less on the technical side.
Right.
So I experimented a little bit. I got in and helped our HR teams a little bit with some trainings and with working with some teams and helping people be, better mentors to others. I also got certified as a coach officially at that point, so that I would, actuaries love to learn something, right?
Right.
We're
Yes.
gluttons for punishment and for taking on new you know uh, exams. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just do this training and see what else I can learn. So that gave me a good background for kind of understanding the nuances of what it means to be a coach and how to use those skills to improve other people's kind of perspectives, mindsets, and approach to what they're doing.
Talk about, you mentioned you became certified as a coach. Talk a little bit about the process and how you became certified as a coach and how one goes about doing that.
There are a lot of ways you can go about it. I opted for an online program. So it was live,
Okay.
but over the course of probably, I think, 3 months of regular classes, coursework, reading, live practicing.
Okay.
So it was really trying to get you to understand some of the theory behind, how coaches operate, because they're
Right.
different than mentors, they're different than therapists, they're different than kind
Hmm.
of, but kind of in the same realm of all these allies that you can have to help you in your careers and in your life. So it was, for me, it was a online program. And then it was just starting to get some practice
Okay.
and, you know, testing out those new skills.
Right. So you started a company called Alignment Ally in 2020. Tell our viewers about what Alignment Ally is and why you named the company that.
So Alignment Ally is my solopreneur business right now. It encompasses the coaching that I do. It encompasses the speaking, the workshops, and the keynotes that I do. So it's a platform for me to kind of house everything that I am working on now. It's a place where I can write and do some blogging. The alignment piece, as I went through the process of really understanding who I was and who I had evolved to be, I really recognized that we are not one-dimensional individuals. We are more than what we are trained to do. We are a compilation of that with our natural strengths and with our core values and with our personalities. And when we can understand how to align all of those pieces, we can figure out how to navigate our own futures and careers and lives a little more effectively. So the alignment piece is really in recognizing that we've got all of these pieces that we're trying to put in some semblance of order so that we can go where we want to go. We can lean into the pieces that we really want to be emphasizing, and we can choose more deliberately how we want to kind of show up in the world.
So I know that you said you kind of evolved this, like you were in the actuarial field 25 years, and you kind of evolved this late in that actual career. I'm kind of on a journey myself too, where I'm still working in the actuarial field, but I'm starting to evolve and doing other things too. Not necessarily as a life coach, but getting involved more into to other things in the social media realm and communication realm, which I don't know how many other actuaries are out there. I talked with last week with Dominic Lee, who's also
Yeah.
getting in the social media realm, and I'm sure there's some other actuaries out there too. But not just that there's actuaries there that might want to do different things beyond just what is in the traditional actuarial realm. So how can actuaries find alignment like this in their career?
It starts, and this is where I started too. It starts with gathering the facts. It starts with recognizing and becoming aware of what it is you really enjoy.
Right.
A lot of times in my career, it's probably the case for a lot of people, is you're measured on a checklist of skills that you need to be doing at this
Hmm.
level. And in order to move to the next level, you've got skills, whether they're
Right.
management related skills or technical skills or soft skills. They're all things that we're trying to check the box. And we tend to lose sight of some of the other things that really energize us, the pieces that, whether it's the social media presence, or whether it's sports, or whether it's helping other people, or whatever it is that you can help get your energy up for,
Right.
that'll help you in the rest of your career as well. So it's becoming aware of those other dimensions of who you are today, because it changes.
Right.
I think at the beginning of my career, there's no way I could have been a good coach, because I didn't have the perspective, I didn't have the experience. And eventually, I think I got to the point where I realized that I had all that now, and I could help people in a different way than I was in my prior career.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know when I look back on my career, early in my career, of course, a lot of it too was that, I was doing something to support my family, and also I was busy with exams. And so that was something that was really a big focus. And now, my families are older and I'm done with my exams. So, I'm looking at other things, and not that these things that I'm doing now weren't passions of mine earlier. It's just now they're kind of evolving and being kind of, I would say, moving up in terms of what I'm enjoying. Um, as I
Right.
said, you named your company Alignment Ally, and so we talked a little bit about alignment. But talk a little bit more about the ally part of it and why it's important for us to have allies in our career.
Uh, if we've looked at any point at an epidemic of burnout and overwhelm and trying to do too much and be too much, and we are at a point where we are trained to think that it's all on our shoulders,
Hmm.
and it really isn't. So allies in the broader sense are the people that are helping you through it, whether it's an official mentor, coach, therapist, whatever it is, or if it's just your partner on a project at work. Like, those are the people that, when we can see the value that we can get from working together with others, the allies are the roles that really help us excel in the areas that we want to, and we can in turn help them excel in the areas that they may want to. So allyship, I guess I would say allyship with a small a, because I know the whole DEI allies is another world out there. But knowing that it's not up to us. Now, unfortunately, actuaries beginning of our career are very much, you cannot have a friend take the actuarial
Right.
exams with you,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
it gets ingrained in us that this is you, and your career is all based on what you are achieving. And it takes a while to realize. I had a hard time, asking for help and kind of looking for ways that people could fill in some of the gaps that I had, so recognizing that allies are there for the good, and you can both be an ally and have an ally in order to improve your own path and your own ability to be more sustainable in your success.
And
So,
and you talked a little bit about, we tend to work on what are our skills, and as actuaries, we have those skills, we have those analytical skills, and a lot of times when we move to our passions, those might be things that aren't necessarily our strengths, and and really, we need to seek those allies to help us where others might have those strengths. So we're good at math, and
yes.
so we might gravitate towards that analytical work. Do you think that kind of scares people off, and a lot of actuaries don't want to explore those non-analytical pursuits because they aren't strengths, and so they tend to stick to the analytical because that's what they're good at?
It definitely can be. Now, I also believe very wholeheartedly that we aren't mono strength individuals either.
Right.
If you've ever done Strengths Finder, they have categorized 34 different strengths, but you know they will give you the top 5, and then if you take a more in-depth analysis, they'll give you all of them. But um, analytics and analysis is kind of what tends to float to the top for a lot of actuaries, because the way that our our brain's work is looking for those patterns and gathering the data and making sense of what's in front of us. But that kind of skill can be applied in a lot of different ways. So even though we're good at that, I would even say that I use that skill in coaching. So once I listen very carefully to all the facts that are going on, I can see the patterns and go, wait a minute, did you recognize that this is going on? And that, finding the insights in a different kind of data can help, use those same skills. But on the flip side, also, if you look at actuaries and, in the work that I've done with StrengthsFinder and with teams that have taken it, yes, analytical skills often is in the top 5, but the other ones are such a varied mix, of relationship ones and strategic thinking ones and execution pieces. And once you start to recognize that, there are millions of permutations of how your strengths can show up, you really are fairly unique in what you have to offer. So it's trying to figure out, how do you want to show up with those strengths and align those up with your passions. So if your passion is in, the sports world, you can use that analytical side to dig into the numbers, or you can, look for other ways that you can use some of your other skills and strengths.
So one of the things I've heard you mention is that sometimes the reason why us as actuaries don't move beyond that is because there's fear in the unknown. And I've heard you talk about the 4 Fs and fear being one of those. Can you talk a little bit more about the 4 Fs and how they fit in with alignment?
Yeah. So the 4 Fs was a concept that I kind of came up with, again, as I was understanding my own situation. And when I started to think about, okay, what is slowing me down? I found that fear was a huge piece, where it was fear of, not knowing what I needed to know, fear of, kind of not having the skills that I needed in order to do the next thing. But there's also fear of success, fear of failure, fear of all of these things that can slow us down. But there are ways to learn to get past that. The friction were some of those things that slowed me down, that kept coming back and coming back and coming back. It's like, okay, there's got to be more to it if it's a recurring theme of this is slowing you down. And when I took a step back, for example, one of the things that I could feel where I was always slowed down was in competitive situations, which is kind of ironic, but I'm not a super competitive person. I'm a much more collaborative person. So when I was forced, or asked to be in situations where it's like we have to win this contract, or we have to do this, that was causing a little bit of friction. It's like, okay, well, isn't there a way that we can find a solution that will, work for everybody? Or, does it have to be win-lose? What can be win-win? And when I started realizing, that was just friction, because it goes against who I am, it goes against my core values, or it goes against how I want to show up in the world, then I could say, okay, is there a way that I can approach this so that I can minimize the friction, either perspective of what I'm approaching, or mindset around, getting into a different frame of reference. So separating kind of the things that were slowing us down, those are the 2 Fs of the fear and the friction, where fears are things you can tend to get by fairly quickly. Frictions are just, they're more opposing the core elements of yourself. The other 2 Fs are more on the positive side. So the 3rd F was flow, and that's a state that I'm sure a lot of people get into, where you just kind of lose track of time. You're in your element, and it's a challenge, but it's easy to kind of get involved in, because it's just the right amount of challenge, and it's interesting, and you've got, excitement about why you're doing it. So when we can get into those flow states, we can be so much more productive. And there's some great studies on, how much more productive, like you can get 5 times as much done in those flow states than you can when you're just kind of doing it, without being in flow. So there's a lot of value to kind of recognizing how to get into flow. And it does tie into some of that friction. Like you're not going to get into flow if you're out of your
Right.
values. And then the fourth F is fun. And that's just something that, that adds the color to what you're doing.
Yeah.
It adds excitement to, your day. If you can listen to the right music, or if you can be with somebody that you enjoy spending your time, that'll make you laugh, that whatever it is. Or if you can get outside and go for a hike, because that really is where you find your fun. So those are four elements of what I call my alignment landscape. If I know where my fears are and where my friction is and where I want to chase that flow, and how I can figure in fun, that kind of gives me a framework for modeling out how I want to move forward on my next challenge, and what I need to look out for and what I want to shoot for.
I think what you say is so true, because I think about the things that I'm working on, and even when there's times where I'm like, this is a lot of work that I'm doing, but I'm having fun doing it.
Right.
Or there's things where I think, oh, this is work that I'm doing, but I have those things where I enter in my mind, oh, should I be doing this? And then it's like that fear starts entering my mind. And I go back and I think about, okay, why am I doing this? And I think I have these goals I want to meet, and I start to say, okay, stop with that fear, because you want to do this. I mean, I'll just say the example of this podcast that I'm doing. This is something new. This is your episode 2 here,
Right.
and there's times where I've had these little things, is should I be doing this? I have all these other things going on in my life. I'm busy. And so so every once in a while I have this little thing of fear saying, "Oh, I have these other things going on. Should I be spending this extra time?" But I think about, reasons why I want to do this, and part of it is this collaborative thing. It's this helping other people. It's things I want to for me to be able to build my social media presence, to be able to communicate better. And so and then there's the fun part of it. I like that fun part of it too, meeting people. But it's all of that. When that fear enters my mind, I just tell myself, take that fear away. There's reasons why I want to do this. And so it's so true that
Mhm.
you've got to get past that fear and those things. It's not like that fear is not going to be there. It's just,
Right.
how do you overcome that fear in that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I love what you said, that it's not about making it easy. It's about
Right.
choosing the hard that you want to face, and knowing why you're choosing it, and knowing how well equipped you are to have the energy to do it, and to,
Right.
you know, to learn the skills that you need to get through it. But it's about choosing the hard that you want to face.
Right. So
Yeah.
I have a couple other questions that are a little bit related, but I know I kind of want to change it up a little bit. One of them I've heard in some of your talks that you've done. You've used the term work-life harmony instead of work-life balance. Why is the term harmony preferred over balance?
For me, when I think about balance, there's a space between the two, and the reality, at least in my own life, is there is no space between work and home, and I'm glad there's not, because I'm the same person whether I'm doing
Mhm.
my work or whether I'm doing what's needed for my family. So it really is about kind of figuring out how to, and to take one step back, the other thing that's true about, all those elements of our life is we need energy. We need to
Right.
be able to kind of feed ourselves and our soul while we're going through these. So the work-life harmony is really about saying, okay, how can what I do in my life when I'm not away from work bring me energy for what I need
Hmm.
to be doing at work, and vice versa? How can I be finding things to do at work that energize me, so that when I come back and I'm facing the challenges of, kids and aging
Right.
parents, that I can get through that too. So it's really about saying, okay, it's one big mechanism, it's one big machine that we're a part of here. is navigating through all those components. So it's about bringing the harmony to it as opposed to kind of that strict, leaning one way or the other, or keeping them separate.
Yeah, I saw something on LinkedIn last week where they said that people who have I can't remember exactly what they called them. It was like side gigs or things like that. They tend to
Right,
be more productive at work. And of course, there were some people that went on there and they argued about it. They said they disagreed. They didn't like it when people who had other things they were doing besides their job, that they weren't dedicated to their job. But I agree with it so much. I feel like when I have these things that I'm passionate about that I'm doing outside of my job, I'm more productive when I'm at my job. I'm when I'm working, I'm 100% dedicated to my job,
right,
but that doesn't mean that, when I'm not working, that there's not other passions that I have, but it energizes
right,
me to when I'm going to work the next day to really, face that and face it head on and really do my best work that day. Because one of the things I'm thinking about, okay, here are the things that I'm really excited about doing after work, and so I can really be energized to get through the day too. And so
yeah,
I think it's so true that, the energy that you get from all these other things you do with your passion really help energize you on your job, and then that energy continues to feed you. And so I agree so much with the work life harmony over the work life balance. I really love that term. So
absolutely, yeah. And I think you can find more creativity. I know actuaries aren't known for creativity, but
right.
in every coding challenge that we have, you've got to think creatively. You've got to think outside the box to come up with the bigger and bigger challenges that we're facing. And when you can have those side hustles or those pursuits outside of just the work, you expand your perspective a little bit more, and you might see something or hear something that kind of clicks and goes, wait a minute, maybe I could try that or apply something like that in my work as well. So again, that's part of
Mhm.
that harmony where it's like, don't separate them, but let
Right.
them kind of flow together.
Yeah. For example, one of the things that I did on my job is we have which is not actuarial. We have a employee giving campaign for charities, and I did interviews with
Mm.
3 different organizations to help promote those organizations for people to donate money to. And so that's something that I did this year. And so I'm
Yeah,
taking some of the stuff that I'm doing off the job and I applied it to something within the job. So it's something, we can start to apply on the job, and I'm looking for other opportunities within my job too, to expand the communications effort that I have here too. So there's definitely opportunities.
absolutely.
So another topic I just wanted to bring up. You did a TEDx talk. Can you talk a little
Yes.
bit about that process and your experience with it?
Yeah. So the TEDx talk was something that I was scared to death to do,
Yeah,
talking about
back to that
fears. It
fear.
was,
Yeah,
yeah, anyone who knew me probably even 5 years ago would be like, there is no way this woman is going to stand on a stage voluntarily.
yeah.
Um, but it kind of came up where I knew that in my business, I wanted to be doing more speaking, and I
Hmm.
want, in the keynote realm as well as workshops and whatnot. And so it dawned on me, I'm like, okay, what could I do that would give me a trial by fire experience of, can I even do this? And B, it might be fun. Who knows? I love
Right.
watching them. So
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, maybe I can do it. So I went in fully with no expectations. But the process requires that you kind of come up with your idea that you
Okay.
want to pitch. So because TEDx is the independently organized TED events, basically. So
Okay.
there's, smaller events, there's hundreds of them throughout the country and even internationally. So each one has its own individual or panel of people that are choosing the speakers. So it's an application process to kind of go in and say, here's 3 main things. One, this is my idea. This is why I'm the right person to talk about it. And this is what your audience will get from
I see.
this talk. So, they event organizers are trying to curate a great day or a great evening or whatever time frame they're fitting in by putting the right people with the right stories and the right talks together to kind of create a really entertaining evening or time around a certain theme. So
Okay.
it helps to know what the theme is that the TEDx that you're applying to is going for, so that you can kind of weave that into to your talk. So anyway, I landed the talk on about my 20th application that was sent out. So it
Okay.
takes a while to kind of hit the mark, and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, who knows? Yeah, I think I've known some people who've sent out 100 before they land one, and some people that land them in on their fifth. So it just is a matter of fishing basically to figure out which one is going to really resonate, your idea with their theme. And then from there, it is a whirlwind of creating the talk, practicing the talk, because it's very different than doing a workshop where you're interacting. It's
Right.
truly a performance of, standing up there and being able to give your idea to the people in the room. Luckily, I did do it in person, which I think I was more scared of trying to create a video of it than doing
I
it in
see.
person, which is kind of weird. Um, but yeah, it was one of those, okay, this is something I'm absolutely scared of, but if I want to do this more for my business, I should probably figure out how to get over that fear.
Right. See.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The part that's really interesting is that you said it took you 20 times to get it. I mean, there's a lot of people that would have given up after two or three times and
Right.
not even tried anymore. So that takes a lot of
Right.
perseverance to do that. Well,
Yeah.
Ari, I really appreciate this time. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about where they can find information about you?
Absolutely. If you're looking, I end up now I have two websites. If you're looking for like workshops and keynotes and all the speaking side, the best information is at areebly.com, areebly.com. But I also have the alignmentally.com website, which has blog. And if you are interested in coaching or just connecting with me, there's ways to find me there as well. So those are the websites, but I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I love it when
Right.
people reach out and connect and just have conversations. I love to learn what people are through, and hear other stories besides mine, because I think every actuary's career that I've run across has been very, very different, which is kind of fun to hear.
Well, thank you, Ari, for being my guest on Actuaries in the Wild, and really interested in your story and really appreciate you sharing it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you. If you're an actuary, you know an actuary who's ventured into the wild, contact me so we can share your story. You can find Actuaries in the Wild on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us on our second episode, and see you next time on Actuaries in the Wild.